what happens if we survive.
Alright, so let us talk about Predator Killer of Killers.
Oh, right.
Boy, I can't wait to talk about this, right? So, let me just do the preamble and then, you could talk about what the show is about, right? So, Killer of Killers, right? This is the second Predator film to be directed by Dan Trachtenberg, right? Previously he did Prey, which was both of two of our favorite films of 2022. Absolutely love it. It introduced me to McGill now. Amber Midthunder, sorry. Yeah. And I will never forget, right? I will never forget. Swear to God. When we talked about Prey, you actually brought up what will eventually be the conceit of Killer of Killers, which is you take specific time periods in world history, you focus on a warrior or a character who could fight and defend himself or whatnot, and you pit them against a predator. I never forget that. And that's what we get here on this show here. I was like, wow, boy. Like the great minds think alike, boy. Wow.
They finally scratch our itch, because to me that's something they should have been doing since Predator 2.
Agreed, especially with the reveal at the end with the gun and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I love go on.
No, that's the thing. I was like, oh yeah, they finally do this thing that they should have scratched. There's something should have been, dominating the VHS DVD market of the 90s and 2000s. Like, you just belt them thing out every two a year, or once every 2 years or whatever it is, and you get it done. That's how it always felt.
Yeah, now I could talk about rollouts with this show. Well, or I should say the conceit of this show going forward, right? I'll talk about that in my review, right? But yeah, boy, where Dan has been taking the Predator series though is kind of brilliant, man, right? And this is coming from somebody who, I generally love the first one, right? The second one is okay. It's a product of 1990, like really what you watch is a product of that. But ever since like then, the series just struggled to find its footing, right? Whether it's with AVP or AVP, the sequel, which is terrible in my opinion, right? And then don't even get me started with The Predator. Oh boy, one of the worst shows I've seen over the past decade, right? But yeah, Dan and his team decided, here's what, let me breathe new life into the series, right? If Alien could at least do that, right? And it's so funny because I think it's either this month or next month we get an Alien Earth, which kind of have me excited, right? And it's off on Hulu as well.
I saw a last trailer for it and it looked great.
Oh, I honestly don't want to see nothing else. I don't want to see anything else. I just want to go in. I saw the first trailer, I was like, all right, I don't need to see nothing else. I want to go in as blind as possible, right? But yeah, this direction makes a lot of sense, right? And it's really interesting too that this movie came out at this time here, because in November we're supposed to get it Predator Badlands, which is actually going to be a theatrical release. That had me real intrigued now. So we have a basically a digital release, so to speak, with Killer of Killers, and now we have Badlands, which is coming out very soon on the big screen, right? But yeah, before you jump into Killer of Killers, take it away. How you felt about Prey and how you feel knowing that the idea that you had in mind back then is being executed like right in front of your eyes now. How you feel about that?
I'm just glad they're finally doing it. Again, it's not like it was my idea. To me, this seemed like just the obvious idea. Like, it's like, oh, they should have been belting these out since the 90s. Insert Predator versus insert, historical warrior archetype here, and just belt out like one of these, every 2 years or so. I'd give you that. I said we kind of got this a little bit with Predators, which I loved. Right, I remember really liking that because that felt like a real proper sequel to the original film.
Right, I forgot Predators. Yeah, I liked it. Didn't love it, but I liked it.
Right.
The one gripe I have with Predators is that it wasn't a continuation of it, especially where it ends. And I thought that The Predator was going to follow from it. It's like, nope, it's just a new story, but it way worse. And that was it. But
we finally got it with that, and I thought that was taken. So yeah, they finally do the thing that they should have done. Right? So yeah, we get Love, Death, and Yowta, right? it works. Like this is really well done. Again, coming from somebody who really liked Prey, thought it was thing. It's like yeah, finally somebody in the right hands to make it work. Now. And yeah, again, shocking we didn't get this before, but we finally got it and it works. They kind of cooking here. The only thing that bothered me about this was the frame rate. I find the frame rate stuff was kind of bothersome for me.
Okay.
Mostly because here's the thing: when you're doing like the frame rate, the only reason that Spider Verse get away with it, I think, is because uh and will kind of get away with it because of how stylized everything is. So you can kind of let it slide because it's technically the frame rate is part of the joke and the conceit. So that's why you have different frame rates and look kind of discordant because they play with the actual conceit of the whole frame rate stuff now. That's why it works there. But in this, it's like, well, it just have one particular style and look. So why do it in like that? I didn't think that bother me about this. But other than that, loved it. Storytelling was good. That second one with the two samurai brothers, well, one's a samurai, one's a ninja. In Japan, that was great.
Yep.
The first one was good. The plain one fell a little flat, but it's still good. Like it
All
was
right. I have my opinion on that, right? But when you finish.
Yeah. And so all of these are just generally excellent, and then they lead into the conceit of well, oh right, this is what the predators do with respect to time. So like it explains like why all of them from disparate times, all of them fight it together. It makes sense. They explain that. They do a bunch of references to stuff in Alien, like they say, oh, there's a character, this Queen Tail or whatever it is, and so on and so forth. And it's not too obnoxious. And then well, that final reveal is great too. It's like, oh shit, that is what we're doing. I would, I can live with that. The final little plot reveal is like pretty cool. Like, all right,
It was. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah. So I thoroughly love this. This was excellent. I hope we get more. I hope they continue with the conceit. They build from it and I hope they build from it, right? And give us some interesting ideas. There's a lot of potential here. It's shocking. 30 years, 30 years late, but not better late than ever. Should I get this like 30 years ago? But we got it and it works. Loving it, dug it.
Yeah, I enjoy the hell out of this show, boy. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did, but I was like, yes, I really am, right? For one thing, just to touch on the animation for a bit, right? Going in, I was thinking, obviously Love, Death and Robots. I thought that,
Right.
and to extent stuff like heavy metal, right? So I love how the show says, all right, we know about how when it comes to animated anthology films, right? Every story must look different, right? But they say
Right.
no. Let me just keep one studio, and I really should have looked up and see which studio was involved with this, right? I didn't see it in the credits. Maybe I should have looked a little bit deeper. I don't know, right? But I like ultimately that it was one studio because it makes the whole thing feels more cohesive, right? Especially when it gets to the third act of the story, which I'll get into in a bit, right? So I like that there's a level of consistency with everything that you see, right?
Right.
That you see here. The frame rating didn't really upset me or take me out of it, but yes, it is noticeable in some points. But I just treated it as
I
just
was only
style,
ready
like
only ready the first one. That the first one with the Vikings.
right
That
with the
was the only.
Vikings, yeah.
It was really noticeable there, but that was about it.
Right. And speaking of that though, I love how these stories are just simple, bare bones to the point, but they just really showcase one person, right? This one warrior, right? So in this case, in Scandinavia, you're treated to this Viking mom, and she basically taking her son and this army basically to go after this warlord who killed her father or whatnot, right? There's a long take dread where she is just slaughtering Vikings, and literally my jaw hit the floor. I was like,
Yeah.
plus that's what they take in the R rating. Oh, okay. Wow, like that dude head got sliced in half. Oh, that's what we doing? Okay, right? It was glorious. It was glorious, right? I love how the predator comes in at a certain time. So you get enough. It could let's get out of the way, folks. And listen, if you want to pick the show for this, that's all right. But I mean, come on, man. Like look at the premise, right? You're not getting like a full detailed story, right? It's just in this world, you see how grim and dark the world is. You see how you had to fight to survive in this world. And just saying here's what this is how they fight each other. Okay, cool, right? And then the predator come and say, "Oh, use the best warrior. I go in after you." That's how it is, right? That's how these stories play out, right? So you know how that plays out there with her make a lot of sense, right? And then from there you see, oh, she's prisoner now on this predator ship. Okay, what's going on, right? For me, though. The one that's set in feudal Japan is the best of the three, right? Because it just tap into that Chanbara samurai fan in me, Dread. Like I was just
Yeah.
watching this and I was just getting 60s and 70s samurai movie vibes, right down to having ninjas fight samurai. It was just me geeking out of it, right? But what I love here now is in this case is like these two young men now, right? I don't think they're brothers, but just two young men who pretty much separate, right? So one stuck with the shogun, and the next one become a ninja, right? They start off fighting each other, and then the predator's like, oh, okay, I go in after this person. I'm not gonna say who, right? But how it comes back in the end now, I thought was great,
That's
right?
hard.
And also, I love how with each story there's a different design to the predator, right? So it's not like like in the case of the Japanese episode or story, he has armor, like samurai armor, or whatever it is, and a headpiece. No, it's not like that, right? But in this case, with the second one, he has a spear, and it makes a lot of sense why he would have a spear when he's going after characters with swords. That makes a lot of sense, right? What I will say without spoiling anything, right? The final move that is done to get rid of the predator, I clap at
the
that
end,
shit.
that's
That
hard.
was so
Yeah, very much.
fucking hot. I was like, what?
Yeah.
This is what we doing, Dan. This is what we are doing, Dan. Right? We doing this, and I love it all. This, right? It was so great, right? The third one, I know that will be kind of the most divisive out of the three, right? Because this is just this Spanish American kid who starts off as this car mechanic, and he ends up in World War II working on this ship basically, right? And then it's just basically just these planes going after a predator ship. So it's a different like twist on the whole, predator versus human kind of thing, right? So in this case, instead of just characters having to fight off predators on ground, sorry, they're in the air, right? So it's just basically the predator in a ship taking down all these planes and whatnot, right? That was a nice little twist on the conceit. That really make a lot of sense, right? But what I think this story is actually the most important because it shows that you don't have to be a badass. You don't have to be rocking some big weapon, whatever it is, to be looked at as a warrior by a predator. You just had to be able to survive. That's what it is. You just had to be able to survive, and you had to be able to think on your toes. And that's what those first two characters were able to do. They were able to look at the environment. They were able to look at the enemy and say, "Oh, that's how he just move. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do to trick him." Boom, the end. And that's what this guy did. Like, even though he's not strong, and he have a gun. I don't think he uses it at all, right? But he's quick on his tools, right? He know how to maneuver with things, right? And yeah, how he stops the predator, which I won't spoil. Kind of over the top, kind of hard to believe, admittedly, but it make a lot of sense, right? So that's why I like, without spoiling, I want to keep things as spoiler-free as possible, right? I like that he's the springboard for what will happen in the third act now, where those three individuals now are put into, basically this arena to fight other predators as well, right? I think that make a lot of sense, right? And forgive me, because I'm not versed in all things predator lore, right? But there's like this predator, this alien dog kind of creature. Was that in Predators or The Predator? I think it was in one of those shows, no? I think so. I think it was in Predators. They had those dog-like creatures. I think so, right? And
right.
when the full reveal is showed us in terms of why they're there, it makes a lot of sense, right? And that's why that final reveal at the end, I was like, all right, yep, all the cooking, all they making a lot of sense, right? So as I wrap up here, right, what I love about just the execution of this, right, is that you could make your own. Dan and his team could continue making more Predator animated anthology shows though. So it could be like the new VHS, for example, where like every year you get like a new film with like a new anthology, like 3 stories, and then you see how the characters have to fight in this arena, whatever it is, right? And you could go into different eras, right, and different warriors, and you could keep going on with it until you just decide, that's the end, right? You could just keep on doing this thing as a series, right? And because now, you're working with this one animation studio, you don't have to worry too much about just making things look different. It's just a matter of the setting and the characters and the story. You don't have to worry about how the entire segment looks. Just make sure everything looks consistent. That's why I think that just stick with one studio, or at least I assume that's what it is, makes a lot of sense, right? So when you get to the third act, it doesn't feel jarring, right? The art style, however, it's consistent from frame one to the end, and that makes a lot of sense, right? And overall, though, it's just the simplicity of it all with the stories and just, boy, the tension in those. I would say in the entire film though, this kept me on edge, right? The stuff with but especially the stuff with them samurais, boy, that was some tense shit, boy. That's the way, because they're like, oh my god, like they're going up against a predator, they're not prepared for this, right? And it's just like one man, like, here's what I gotta do, what it takes to stop this guy, right? And this keeps you on the edge of your seat, right? So yeah, this features some of the best action I have seen in any Predator film, bar none, right? And I absolutely dug the art style, right? I mean, if we could talk about the frame rate as well, but I like the art style, right? Voice acting, solid for the most part. Music, I had to mention last thing about music, right? Also, before I get to music, the kills though, sweet kills, boy. I talk about like graphic gory shit. I'm like, wow, boy. And you're like, you talk about how we wait 30 years, right? We could have gotten this level of kills like since Predator 2, Dread, and we didn't really get that, right? But this one, they say, here's what we go in animation. This is animated. Here's what we going all out with these kills. Right? It's some of the best kills I've seen in this franchise, right? And lastly, with the music, which is done, by I think it's Benjamin Wallfish, right? He's a guy. He's mostly worked with like Warner Brothers films. I remember he did the score for, Mortal Kombat, the 2021 one. That's all I'll say. But yeah, I thought that his score was pretty solid as well, right? And I like that if you listen closely, he will draw from certain cues from the original Predator music. Yeah, if you remember the Predator, the original music from Predator, it's kind of over the top, especially with the horns. You hear these dun dun and dun 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 dun. It would just sound so over the top now, right? So I like that he would just draw inspiration ever so often with his score, right? So it works. But yeah, absolutely love this show. Strong 4 to a very like 4.5 out of 5. This is one of the best things I've seen all year. Dan really hit onto something here. And again, I could see more films like this, right? Coming out, maybe not on a yearly basis, but just coming out consistently, right? And it's just same premise, right? 3 to 4 warriors, different time periods. They have to team up in the end, fight off some predators. You see what happens from that point on. I just keep going and going and going until Fox Studios say, or should say 20th Century Studios, whatever they call themselves now, is just say, yeah, I think we're done, Like, let me just do some live action. Like, let me just say we could do like a live action Predator TV series, like how Alien Earth is right now. Like, once we reach that point, are we so confident in our own material that we could do that, and we could stop these anthology films, right? But at the end of the day, I think Dan is onto something here, and I would just love to see this become its own franchise, right? This whole animated Predator universe, if you will. I want to see that grow and evolve, right? But yeah, Killer of Killers is a hell of a way to kick things off, and yeah, by far one of the best shows of the year, hands down. So Ricardo, final thoughts, gripes or whatever, and rating.
Yeah, no, this is, as I said, love this at the outer, is a good start. As I said, I would like them to build from this, not just do the same conceit over and over. Because even if I completely about the show do this 30 years ago, even back then they would have built on it, if they had the time. But yeah, I just really glad we finally getting this with the Predator franchise. They could square to the Alien franchise in some way, maybe do some stuff with it. They could do all kind of things with this. So a lot of potential. Really, really dig the hell out of this rating. Yeah, I give it like a 8 out of 10 though. This was excellent though. Really well done stuff. Can't be mad.